sorry. And genetic information within this nucleus is stored as chromosomes. So our genetic code is in a series of 4 letters, A, G, T, and C. This order is transcribed into RNA sequences, which are transported out of the nucleus to the cytoplasm. Here they are translated into proteins that carry out almost all of the biological functions in our body. The sequence of the code determines what protein is produced, and changes in the genetic sequence can change the structure of the protein. So we receive 1 copy of each chromosome from each parent. So we actually have 2 copies of every gene because we have 2 copies of each chromosome. This further adds to our diversity because the copies of the genes are not necessarily identical, meaning that they can encode different proteins, which may have altered functions. The inheritance patterns of our genetic code are what makes genetic genealogy possible. So how can we use this genetic code in genealogy? You inherit 50% of your father's DNA and 50% of your mother's DNA. And they receive 50% from each of their parents, who received 50% from their parents, and so on and so forth. This pattern of inheritance allows us to determine our relationship with other people based on how much DNA we have in common. Just as a side note, it's not a perfect mathematical system. So just because you receive 50% from each parent doesn't mean that you're 25% each grandparent. This is a phenomenon called recombination. Just remember that genetic inheritance patterns they're not always perfect. So there's many, many different ways that we can use DNA results to trace our family heritage. Most DNA testing companies offer autosomal DNA tests, and they identify unique markers called SNPs in your autosomal chromosomes, which you share in common with your ancestors and some ethnic groups. Your genetic code is a mosaic of your ancestors, and this is the type of service that is offered by Ancestry DNA. Some testing companies also offer Y-DNA and mtDNA tests. Now, these are highly conserved portions of your genetic code and trace back to specific ancestral groups. So let me explain. If you are a genetic female, you have 2 X chromosomes. Recombination can occur because they are the same type of chromosome. If you are a genetic male, you have 1 X and 1 Y chromosome. As the Y chromosome is smaller than the X chromosome, recombination is less likely to occur. This means that men have nearly identical Y chromosomes to their father. This conservation allows us to trace paternal ancestral lines, often belonging to a specific population, only in male DNA samples, though, as women cannot get Y DNA results. mtDNA, so mitochondrial DNA, is similar. As you inherit your mitochondrial cells from your mother, we can trace maternal ancestral lines back, and both male and female DNA samples can be tested for mtDNA. These are services that are offered by 23andMe in addition to autosomal DNA testing. It's not a major addition for family tree building, however, since many of these ancestor lineages lived over 10,000 years ago. Inheritance patterns in your autosomal DNA are what we use for family tree building. So as I mentioned earlier, there are expected ratios for each type of genetic relative, which you can use to understand genetic relationships and how genetic companies predict your relationship with genetic relatives. Notice that percent shared DNA is not specific to a single genetic relationship. Grandchildren, niece, nephew, grandparent, and aunt, uncle are all 25% shared DNA, for example. Also remember that genetic inheritance is it's not perfect. So you may not share these exact values with your genetic relatives. For example, as opposed to being 50% or 25% each grandparent, you could be 26, 24, or what have you. It's not perfect. Now, if you're interested in learning more about DNA and demystifying the genetic genealogy / chromosome mapping, you can check out the website called DNA Painter. They have free webinars, tools, and also a whole bunch of additional resources that can help you understand and map your ancestral tree, figure out DNA matches, and use your matches to potentially identify unknown ancestors. And if you have any questions about the science stuff, that's about as far as I know. We'll have to Google that, just to let you know for the end of the discussion. Now, the two most common, speaking of Google, if you're on the internet and you're searching, these are the two most likely to pop up first: Ancestry DNA and 23andMe. They are two of the most common to come across and definitely two of the most widely used. I included this slide because I knew I was recording this presentation. So if you do want to, come back and watch this presentation and it pause on this slide, you certainly can do that. However, I'm going to be covering this information in the next two slides. So Ancestry DNA is user-friendly and tailored toward family tree building. It's also connected if you have a personal ancestry account. You can also connect it with your account, which is quite handy. Results can include pie charts on your ethnicity estimate, ways to sort, group, and view your DNA matches, your ancestors' potential journeys over time. They also include little tidbits of history, depending on the regions of which your ancestors may have come from, and which side of the family your ethnicities come from. So is it maternal or paternal? And DNA traits to explore physical and personal traits that your DNA holds. They also have a really good FAQ section to answer additional questions, such as how they calculate these estimates and if your results will change over time. That is a common note, is you might look at your results 3, 4, 5, even longer months down the road, and you notice that maybe there's regions taken out, there's percentages that have changed. And so Ancestry does note that since the science behind genetic testing continues to evolve and improve, so do the results as well. So it's not uncommon to see variations over time if you do take really many of these tests, or whichever one you choose, which we'll get into more. So Ancestry tests the autosomal DNA. And pros is it is connected to Ancestry, and you can certainly use it if you're interested in family tree building. Cons of this one, though, is if you're interested in genetic health screening, this doesn't offer that. So keep that in mind when you're trying to figure out which one you want to do. 23andMe, the other really, really common one, conducts scientific research, which you can opt out of being included, and allows you to complete questionnaires about traits that can be related to your genetic biology. Health results, fairly interesting, but remember that a lot needs to happen in your body for a gene to be expressed. So just because you have a marker for a specific genetic disorder, it doesn't mean that you're going to develop it. So 23andMe tests the autosomal DNA, Y-DNA, and mtDNA groups. And it does offer genetic health screening if that's something that you're interested in. However, it is not connected with Ancestry and not really great for family tree building. However, they do, as you can see under quick links on the side there is an Ancestry section, which does offer educational tutorials, ancestry composition, DNA relatives, comparing with your relatives, as well as legacy tree genealogists. So you can hire a team of genealogists if you choose. And for health and traits, it does offer health predispositions, carrier status, interesting traits, whatever that may be, and health beyond your genetics. It also gives you the opportunity to participate in research if you choose. Now, these are not the only two. There are a ton out there. 3 others, so these are a few other common ones you'll likely come across, again, with their each pros, cons, and opportunities available. So for those of you who have very strong Irish and British background, you might be interested in Find My Past. And so Find My Past does accept DNA results also from Ancestry DNA, 23andMe, MyHeritage, Family Tree DNA, and others. You just have to email to see if, beyond the list that they have on their website, if they accept those DNA ones as well. And Find My Past really does focus on family tree building, and it is, well, as they state on their website, the only DNA test that hones in on British and Irish family history. They also do have a genealogy website as well. The middle one here is Living DNA. This one offers multiple DNA options, such as multiple levels of ancestry kits, well-being, nutrition, etc. They state that through their ancestry kit, you can use their unique DNA constellations method to explore 500 years of family history, including regional breakdowns. And they also offer extended family matching and an online platform to interact with your results. I did read on their website that they do say that their results, especially if you consider mutations over the years and things like that, which mutations is not a bad thing. It's part of, evolutionary biology and really makes us all genetically unique. They say that they can go back about 50,000 years. So I find that kind of interesting, and I'm curious about that. The third one I have on here is Nebula. It's lesser known, but it is highly rated as well. So they focus on the autosomal Y-DNA and mtDNA data to learn more about both your ancestry and your health. Their website in particular, I wanted to highlight here because I know especially because this is such new research still, like it hasn't really been around for a long period of time. One of the very common questions is, and it's been my question too, especially when I heard about this, is if I send in my DNA, where does it go? What happens to it? Who has access to that information? Is it going to be accessed by a third party? Like, who has ownership over it? What if things change? I know that's privacy, especially, is a very big question in this field. And Nebula on their website, basically right at the forefront, highlights their policies on privacy, including who accesses your data. So that one's a really good one to look into if that is a big concern of yours. And it also educates you a little bit more on maybe some other DNA tests if you're interested in taking one, kind of what their policies are too. So you can compare that as well if that's something you're interested in. So I just do want to highlight that our job here at the archives is not to recommend which one of these DNA tests to take and which one's better than the other. They all have pros and cons in their own unique way. Our job here is to educate and to help provide you the information to help you make an informed decision on which test best works for your needs. So whether you're hoping to learn more about your health predispositions, or maybe learn more about your birth parents, if you're stuck in your genealogical research and hoping DNA might help, we all have that one ancestor that we just can't figure out for the life of us, and we want to know. Whatever that question might be, you have so many options in choosing DNA testing and choosing which DNA testing company best suits your needs. So this discussion today was to highlight some of the more common ones, show you that there is a lot out there, and to just remember that each company offers a different focus. So wherever your research takes you, and wherever you go as you research, look into more of what each one has to offer and make a decision. Unless you've already got one, then kudos. Make a decision, choose based on what information you are hoping to learn and what one of the DNA testing companies best coincides and best relates to what you are hoping to learn and grow and engage with, and if whatever one answers all of your questions and concerns as well that you might have with DNA testing, because in the grand scheme of things, it is fairly new. And it is hard to believe that 20 minutes has already gone by. Short and sweet. I did want to leave time for questions. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat box or the Q&A. And I'd be happy to answer them. And it's a nice cozy group of us today. So I was really nervous about this one, so that's good. I hope it went well and all of that. So I'll just hang tight for a couple minutes if anyone has any questions. I purposefully did this slide. I actually pulled this image from Family Search. So at the archives here, we do use Ancestry Library and Family Search very, very regularly for most of our, not most of our research, but a lot of our research, because they both offer unique and different research material. They obviously have overlap, but there are some different things on each, especially find that out in the property research lunch and learn. And I really liked how their website really created really nice summaries for each one of the more common DNA. And I didn't cover in the other slide MyHeritage or Family Tree DNA, which I have heard a couple patrons have experience about. And I've heard both obviously positives and negatives with every single one of the DNA testings. So yeah, and they have the handy dandy hyperlinks to help direct you to where you need to go. Not seeing any questions. So I'll give it 1 or 2 more minutes and then I think we will finish up for the day. And I hope, like I said, I have my tea, so I hope everybody got to enjoy a nice snack and a nice afternoon lunch beverage, whatever that may be. And I hope everyone learned a little bit more today. If you do want to reach out to the archives and chat a little bit more about what we discussed, you can contact us by emailing archives@county-lambton.on.ca, or you can go to lambtonarchives.ca and fill out the form on our website, and I will happily get back to you with anything or any questions that you may have. All right, with that said, I hope everybody has a wonderful afternoon. And stay tuned for upcoming workshops and events, both here in the Lambton County Archives, as well as a few that we have coming up in person in the libraries. All right, bye.